Good afternoon and welcome again to MIPIM2022. I'm joined here by my colleague and very good friend, Louis Keighley. My friend Louis Keighley, who is an Associate Director at Savills, works in the Global Residential Development team, which is expanding at a tremendous pace. And we're going to talk to Louis a little bit about life, real estate, branded residences and about Savills. So thank you for joining us and welcome, Louis.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to cover a few topics today, but I just wanted to start quickly with Savills, who announced last week record-breaking results with total revenues of £2 billion, profit of £300 million, and a cash in the bank of £350 million. So a wonderful record. Louis, what's the secret of Savills? How do you keep growing?
So I think from our perspective, one of the key areas for Savills is becoming more of a global business. We are very fortunate to have an enormous network of associates and Savills offices abroad, and a lot of our disciplines use those associates and offices as a means of diversifying and growing the business.
So well done, and what a wonderful year. Can you tell me, I know your own portfolio is, your own job description is quite diverse. Can you tell me what projects are you currently working on within your remit?
Sure. So our remit, as you know, is a global one. In fact, we work everywhere apart from the UK. And the areas of focus have always been around the Mediterranean basin. So Italy, Portugal, Spain. But one of the key areas we've seen a lot of growth is in the Caribbean and the Middle East. But those would be the two newest and most dynamic areas.
When it comes to the Middle East, I was just looking at the Saudi Arabia stand. Are you involved in Saudi Arabia in any way?
Absolutely. I'm not entirely sure what I can and can't say about the projects we're involved in. I think it's publicly known that we are working with Neon and Amala out there. So two enormous regeneration projects which are set to set new standards.
And can you tell me about the buyers, the typical buyer of branded residences? Are they investors or users, or what's driving that?
So the buyers in branded residences is quite diverse, and that's one of the reasons the sector is growing so well and so profitably. You get the lifestyle and trophy buyers who are looking for a one-off asset as a trophy purchase, less interested in the investment angle, but more in having the premium product in any given destination and that affiliation with the brand. And then on the other hand, you have the investor purchaser. And here, a lot of branded residences will offer a rental management program where it's high yielding potential or even guaranteed yields in some instances. So a relatively safe way to have long-term investment, as well as the capital growth of the property over a lifespan.
Thank you. When it comes to a new market, we won't call Montenegro or Croatia emerging because everyone has a different view of it, but I think we're definitely emerging from a luxury perspective. But would the preference be to bring in a global, well-known brand, or would you go with something new and sexy?
It's a very delicate question. So on the one hand, you have the advantage of bringing a local brand. So you take France, for example. France is a very patriotic country compared to the rest of them. You have the advantages of bringing in the local dynamics. One of the things that we focus on as a team is really identifying the buyer profile when we do our development consultancy for these projects, really identifying who that buyer is going to be. So to answer your question, for the international schemes, international brands, you have the brand following, which adds a whole new buyer pool to the asset. But it's important that the core asset is attractive enough to attract those international buyers. It's not just a brand that's going to bring the buyers, the asset has to be attractive as well.
Very interesting. So Louis and I often say that investment is a bit like a river in that it follows the path of least resistance. And then that's one of the issues we were touching on regarding Croatia, is that offering leasehold land to developers is really proving very difficult for us to get projects off the ground. You'll be very happy to know that Tivat, which 15 years ago was the cheapest real estate on the whole Adriatic, in fact, is now the most expensive real estate next to Dubrovnik and Opatija. And this is all in thanks to the Porto Montenegro effect. So the point being is that a rising tide lifts all boats, as they say, and all the neighbours, and everyone's the winner in Tivat, the quality of the jobs. price of the real estate outside of the resorts is rising very steadily, and it's actually put Tibet on the map rather than a place to stop and get petrol like it used to be 15 years ago. So I'm sure Brendan won't mind me mentioning this. But Port of Montenegro really has been a game changer for Montenegro.
Totally. And actually it's probably one of the model branded residences that we've seen, and we often use it as one of the ways, or one of the developments that has had the most success in the sector. You know, there are some developers that get it right, and that is the perfect example of it.
So we know from working with Louis and his team quite extensively, in fact I think we're a large part of their business in Croatia and Montenegro over the years, that when we enter a project we have the goal to satisfy 4 stakeholders in fact. So not only the developer of course, which is very important, there's obviously the end user, there's the piece of land itself that we don't destroy it, and there's the country in fact. So and we have to find a solution to make all 4 stakeholders be satisfied with the outcome. So Louis, that's a fair assessment of where you start with a greenfield site.
Absolutely. There's many as you say, stakeholders that are in effect right here. And it's important that, and actually probably one of the advantages of a branded scheme is the benefits it can add to each of those stakeholders. So you take the developer, you increase the price premiums, as we've talked about before, the buyer profiles that are attracted to that scheme. And then you go to the owner. The owner then has the security of the brand. It has the comfort of knowing that it's, you know, the security, the privacy that you would have associated with that brand. You have the rental management opportunity, so the yields that we've touched on before. But then again, as a country, and as you would have seen in Montenegro, where there's been a huge amount of branded schemes over the years, it brings a certain level of prestige. You start putting the country on a more global map, and position that country, and it's amazing to see the impact that has on tourism and buyers within that country.
So the next one is a bit of another tricky question. So we have an anomaly in our part of the world where the projects coming to the market in Croatia are typically from the government. Land which the government is handing to a developer through obviously a tendering process. But the issue we have is that the land is being transferred through a leasehold. We know that the products in Montenegro, through whatever way they've managed, have been able to sell as freehold. But can you give us an idea from your experience the effect that a leasehold contract has on the development rather than a freehold?
So I mean, typically with these branded schemes, we tend to look at freehold land, much simpler and easier transaction. Leasehold gets a little bit more complex. It's not to say that it's not possible, but I think in this instance, what's important is to get the ownership structure agreed between the branding partners, the developers and the owners. As long as there's some transparency from the offset, then it's up to those parties to make it work.
Sales prices would typically be lower on leasehold.
I would have thought so, and also your buyer pool will be narrower. So you know, the amount of buyers that are attracted to a leasehold property are much slimmer than a freehold property.
Very interesting. I guess, you know, a lot of the talk this week, whether we like it or not, is for us the horrendous events which we're seeing in Ukraine. How do you see the second home business generally being affected? What's your opinion?
So it's interesting you should ask. I here at MIPIM actually sat down with a few Cypriot developers, and due to the geostrategic location of Cyprus, Russians have always been a key buyer for them. So obviously with the current events, that's fairly problematic for new developments. But interestingly, they've seen quite an increase in different buyers. So Israelites are a huge buyer for Cyprus, as well as some Middle Eastern buyers, and those numbers have grown over time. You know, it's not enough to cover off the gap that is going to occur through what's happening in Russia and Ukraine.
Yes.
So we'll have to see, I guess. We'll have to see how things evolve.
Thank you. And many of our viewers will be interested in your opinion, Louis, on MIPIM2022. I was giving some speech earlier about how things seem certainly quieter and more subdued. How do you find MIPIM2022?
So it's been interesting actually coming here. Obviously we've had a couple of years with no MIPIM, so we weren't sure how it was going to turn out, whether people would still be reluctant to come. But actually coming here, especially on the second day, you can see that the numbers have definitely come back in again. Actually, I think talking to the organisers, typically expect about 25,000 visitors. I think this year we're at about 20,000 registered. So it's still really, really strong numbers. But one of the things that we've definitely noticed amongst my colleagues is whilst the numbers might be slightly down on what we've had in previous years, the level of interaction and the engagement of new clients that we're meeting or existing clients is a little bit higher. I think we've got less of people here for the enjoyment side, and people here who are really serious about expanding their businesses and things. So it's been really great.
Very interesting. So look, that's been wonderful, and thank you to Louis for a wonderful chat.